Why is enacting innovation in healthcare so difficult?
Thank you. So I suppose I'm the person in the room that's not a surgeon. I'm not here trying to sell you medicine. I'm a dentist. Actually, I'm a restorative dentist, and we are the biggest user of toys that you can think of. In the UK, we have a toy shop called Hamley's. That's heaven to a restorative dentist. We buy every toy there is because we need it. We need those toys, and that's one of the problems. Because these toys come on the market, we buy them, and then we don't use them. We put them in the back of the cupboard somewhere, and it's costing a lot of money. So that's one of the questions that we're asking. So I'm going to ask you 5 difficult questions, and that's really what we're here today to look at, is to try and see where we are. Sorry, I'm trying to make this work forward. That's it. So actually we need to know who is in the game. Who are we actually looking at? They've got many, many stakeholders. There are lots of people involved with this. And often the players have got substantial resources. They've got the money. They can do something with it. And they've got the power to influence public policy. And public policy is one of the key factors. We've got to get the policymakers to understand that when there is something that's innovative and is useful and is safe, then we want those sort of people to be involved and get it done. So we've got hospitals and doctors, they blame technology. I haven't got that toy, so I can't do it quite as well. I need to buy the toy, and they have a strop, and they go away and they play that they're not going to be able to do it because they've not got the toy. That's really important as well. But we need to understand that there are the non-profit organizations, the charities, we've got the profit organizations, which might be the private care, and we've got the NHS in the UK or any public-driven roles as well that are important as well as this. And we've got patient advocates, and I think the patient is a really important person in this. But the patient reads it now in the media that this is the new toy that's going to make their operation better, safer, and it's not going to cause as much pain. But they're driving the innovation. And is that the right thing? Because we saw earlier, we heard about the spiral endoscope and the problem that that's got. Well, you might have read as a non-medic, you might have read at the beginning that this is the most wonderful tool ever. You request to have that done, and then you end up with a perforation. So we've got some real problems there. And funding, this is one of the key bits. This is where it is a real financial challenge for us to actually get that funding. And who is going to provide that funding for the new toy that comes out? New toys are expensive because they've taken a lot of money to actually produce. And so that's one of the important things. And it's not just the toys that we play with, it's the drugs as well. So the pharma companies are exactly the same. And they need government approval. And how long does government approval take? Well, it used to take a long time, but actually COVID has proved that it needn't take quite as long time, and actually if they get their fingers out, they could actually do this a lot quicker. So there is some work that needs to be done as far as that's concerned. And we know that if a venture capitalist might have an IT setup, they get their money out in 2 or 3 years, but they're not seeing that back. The people who have got innovations in the medical field and are providing us with new equipment are not seeing that money coming back to them anywhere near as quickly. It might be up to 10 years. And some of the traditional ways that capital can be brought into the market are not used to this type of technology, and it's a new way of thinking for them. So particularly for governments, it's a different way of them starting to think about what they're trying to do, and I think we've got to make it so we can explain that better to them so they actually understand what's happening. And who's accountable for this? Who's actually saying that that's right? Well, we've got this, as I said, we've got the consumer, and the consumer is pushing us to make the changes. And we've got these people saying, well, okay, so if you've paid that much for your new equipment, how am I going to get the benefit? Why am I not getting that used on me? Why is that not happening in my hospital, in my small hospital somewhere? And so we've got the problem with safety, which we've mentioned earlier, and that's one of the key things. And I think safety is without doubt the most important part of this. So we end up with new equipment, and do we know that that's going to be safe? And we've seen already examples of why that not be the case. So what really happens is that you see the overseeing of these processes, and they typically focus on process rather than on output. And I think it's really key to make sure that we are reporting output and we're looking at improvements in patients' health, not just the fact that we've got a new toy to play with. So often the people that are looking into this aren't actually neutral. They're actually being paid for by some of the companies. And I think we've got to be also cautious who we invite to do that. So that's another aspect that we need to do. So then we look at the technology itself, and we look at what's happening here. We've got the new drug delivery systems, new medical devices, and we think that it's going to be less costly, and are they going to be widely available? Well, that may not be true. The problem that we've got, we can't decide necessarily on a worldwide platform, and I think those of us who are old enough in the room will remember the old video things where we had Betamax, VHS, and actually the best system, which some of you may not have even heard of, was just Philips 2000. So actually the best system was the least heard of because it was the most expensive, but the other two systems couldn't decide on a platform that was equal. We actually see the same thing still happening with Apple, with Google, with Android. And if we're not collecting information, and this particularly in AI, if we're not collecting it on the same platform, it becomes less important. If you have 200 different platforms collecting 200 bits of information, that's not as good as having 4,000 on the same platform. That's important. And we need to be able to decide, and how do we do that? How do we negotiate between each other to make sure we're all using that same platform? And that platform is accessible, and people can get to it, and the files that are generated are something that everybody can look at. So the end user, of course the end user is important, and they are very, very important, and because they're no longer that passive, yes sir, you're the doctor, you know best, they're now questioning, is that the best way? Are you the best doctor? Are you using the best equipment for me? Why is that not the case? I'm going to go somewhere else to have my treatment done because that doctor is more famous and that doctor's got the better equipment. And they spend a lot of their money on healthcare services. People will go out of the public systems and they go into private care, and they expect more for their buck once they've gone into private care. So they need to recognise, and governments need to recognise, this growing sense of empowerment which they want for the patients, and which is quite right, but then they need to be able to listen to it. So we've got a lot of things, we've got a lot of very fancy equipment that we can have, and I think we've got to the stage now where we can discuss and answer perhaps some of the questions that I've posed for you. So thank you very much for your time.